March 2nd, 1999, Sony announces the PS2. Bill Gates panics and demands that Microsoft does something before the big black menace replaces the PC in the living room. And the answer was this. Launched on November 15th, 2001, what you're seeing here is 8.5 pounds of juicy early 2000s gaming goodness. I first picked an Xbox up from EB Games when they were a few years old and pretty much bargain bin material. I remember Dad actually got into an argument with the guy behind the counter because he couldn't sell him Grand Theft Auto San Andreas since I was a minor. Problem was, the sale had already been made and Dad was a little less, docile back then. So needless to say, I was another impressionable kid whose mind was apparently warped by perhaps the Mac Daddy of violent video games at the time. But more importantly, I was introduced to the world of Xbox.
The Xbox is everything The Rock is. Cutting edge, powerful, exhilarating, and like The Rock, it will be the most electrifying thing coming out this year.
Rock, as much as I love your humility now, God, you were fun back then. I won't bore you with technical specs as I feel that's what Google's for, but to break this beast down, it has a built-in hard drive, so throw away your memory cards and enjoy quicker load times as you're presented with crisp imagery ranging from 480p minimum all the way up to 1080i resolution on certain games. And thanks to Dolby, we have surround sound for the moving 3D imagery. Ugh, I just love this thing so much I want to get behind it and plug its hole. With an Ethernet cable. That's right. An Ethernet cable to support broadband connected internet. Now this was back when only about 5% of US households had broadband, but Xbox owners that did enjoyed LAN parties. You know little Johnny who screams through his headset of how hard he f***ed your mum last night? Well, imagine like 16 of him in the same house, each with their own TV and Xbox plugged into the modem, making a racket over a game of Star Wars Battlefront, Crimson Skies, or of course Halo. Now, I'm not a Halo fan. When Halo 2 first came out, I'd watch my neighbour play it, bored out of my friggin' mind. But I can appreciate what Halo did for the first-person shooter genre. Earlier console titles like GoldenEye and Medal of Honor were fine, but they lacked precision and their low frame rates couldn't cope with the constant view changes. Developer Bungie basically took everything that, at the time, was only possible on a PC with a mouse and keyboard and brought it to the Xbox with Combat Evolved. Halo 2 would be the best-selling game on the system and helped push online multiplayer into the mainstream with the Xbox Live subscription service.
Let's play!
Anyone else remember how cool spiky blonde hair was back then? You nailed the marketing, Microsoft. Instead of having to manually search for a lobby, Xbox Live let players automatically find people to play with, and it allowed parties to stay together even after a match. Almost sounds like I'm describing online gaming today, right? On closer inspection, we have a disk drive, obviously for games, but also DVDs if you bought a playback remote. Big sales mistake, Microsoft. An Ethernet port, we've been over that. And 4 controller ports originally for this hunky-dory known as the Duke. Not so user-friendly, but later released was the smaller Type S controller, the size of which is near perfect and it feels just right in your hands.
That's what she said!
And these breakaway cables are ingenious. I tell you, the amount of times my console was saved from being pulled onto the floor and shaking the whole house with how much of a tank it is. Which may make you wonder, why so big? Were Microsoft compensating for something? Well, you know, Bill Gates does have a pretty small pair of hands, but they also needed to fit what's essentially a toned-down PC inside, and so as cool as their chrome X-shaped prototype was, it was never going to be practical. So while the size might have been too big for your girlfriend to handle, Xbox's technology allowed for gorgeous looking games, with multiplats usually looking a ton better than they did on the PS2 or GameCube, and sometimes had extra content exclusive to the Xbox version. A couple I've come across are Silent Hill 2, offering like an hour-long side story where you play as Maria before she meets James, as well as the Spider-Man first movie game having an additional boss fight with Kraven the Hunter. Good too, because I sure was craving some Kraven. Oh baby, you're just the gift that keeps on giving. The Xbox actually allowed you to rip your CDs onto its hard drive, then add the music to soundtracks on games that allowed it, the Grand Theft Auto trilogy being among these. I mean, I love the Vice City soundtrack as much as the next person, but come on Rockstar, where was Jump For My Love by the Pointer Sisters? Ah, now that's fitting. You know what's not so fitting? The tight outfit on Tina here from Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate. Me and my brother were jamming this on multiplayer the other day, and he goes, "This character is OP as." I responded, "Yeah, she is overly perverted, isn't she?" Apparently that's not what he meant, but I stand by what I said. Dead or Alive is one among a few game series originally developed for Sega systems that, after the Dreamcast's sad demise in 2001, sought refuge by being continued on the Xbox. And while developer Team Ninja would have Dead or Alive published by Tecmo, a lot of IPs published by Sega themselves that left off on the Dreamcast would be continued on Xbox. Some standout, what I call zombie Dreamcast games are Crazy Taxi 3, Jet Set Radio Future, and Panzer Dragoon Auto.
These tight controls and the amazing colours, man, you really can't go wrong with these arcadey kind of games.
Sega would also publish titles for the PS2 and GameCube, but seeing their games like Sonic Heroes and Amazing Island, it's clear they wanted to give the creme de la creme stuff to Microsoft. I mean, it makes sense. Microsoft had rapport with Sega from when they developed the Windows CE operating system for the Dreamcast, with the two never being in direct competition with each other. Now, the Sega stuff is great. Halo to most people is great. But there's a shit ton of other exclusive games on the Xbox that are also well worth playing. Screw you, Doom 3. I was going to nominate you, but now you can forget it. Lost my train of thought now. Where was I? Alright, games worth playing. It's got Fable, Fusion Frenzy, Forza, Project Gotham Racing, Ninja Gaiden, Mech Assault, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, and my personal favourite, Stubbs the Zombie. Set in a satirical take on futuristic 1950s America, where eating people's brains and pissing in the water supply to poison the population are two of your main objectives, and having the same game engine as Halo makes for smooth gameplay both on foot and when you're driving vehicles. Now I know it's not an exclusive, but I can't not mention Burnout 3 Takedown. Kind of a racer demo derby hybrid, where you race while gaining points based on how well you can smash people out of commission, though I spend most of my time in road rage mode, where you have to take down a certain amount of cars before the other players. It's super addicting on multiplayer, and the game looks gorgeous at 60 frames per second with a nice set of component cables. Did I mention the cheeky-ass radio host?
Whose dumbass idea was this anyway? Probably my ex-girlfriend's.
God, I miss the 2000s. Sadly, the party would be cut short when Xbox hardware production ceased in August 2005. In favour of the 360 that would launch not long after, which Microsoft clearly wanted to focus on pushing. Fewer and fewer games were released as the years went by. I remember visiting my local warehouse store in 2006, and I swear there must have been like 8 or less original Xbox titles on the shelf. The lucky last title was released in 2008, being Madden NFL 2009. With the Xbox Live service continuing on until April of 2010 when the server was finally shut down. Sob. I admire the commitment of the group that came to be known as the Noble 14, who actually left their consoles on and hooked up to the server, continuing to play Halo 2 online for almost a month after the network's official close. Alright, Wipe that Dorito dust off your fingers and listen good, because I got some stats for you. Sony's PS2 sold 156 million systems worldwide. Nintendo's GameCube would sell 21 million. And the winner is... not the Xbox. While 24 million systems were sold worldwide, outselling the GameCube, both were obliterated by the PS2. Considering it could play DVDs right out the box and was cheaper than most DVD players themselves, thus attracting a lot of non-gamers, had a library more than 2.5 times the size of the Xbox and GameCube combined, and perhaps the best selling point, SingStar. But seriously, the PS2 was of course native to Japan. The Xbox was not. The truth is, Japanese people aren't usually too keen on systems that aren't from home, and with only about 2% of total Xbox sales being in Japan, this becomes pretty clear. People might debate whether the Dreamcast should be included when discussing the 6th console generation. I wouldn't deem it a competitor in the race, given the plug was pulled so early, no pun intended, but I think I'll give it an honourable mention, having sold 9.6 million systems worldwide. If you've made it this far into the video, thanking you, you're a legend. Now, as much as I'd kill to be back in 2004 when the 6th generation was arguably at its peak, it's fun to be able to look back at these older systems and see how well they've held up. At the time of this video's recording, we're approaching Xbox's 22nd birthday, so I posed the question, is it worth buying and collecting for in 2023?
Yes, oh yes, I will!
Sorry, Xbox just proposed to me after all these years of seeing each other. I said yes to Xbox, and I say yes to you too. The systems themselves are cheap, so long as you don't want a special coloured one, but those are a whole different ballpark. The games are mostly cheap, with a few desirable ones having crept up a bit over the last few years, but still nowhere near some of the popular GameCube and PS2 titles, especially multiplats. Take Mortal Kombat Deception for example. It's about $90 on the GameCube, yet about $15 on the Xbox. Or Silent Hill 2. For the PS2 it can be between $120 and $150 depending on condition. The Xbox version is anywhere between $40 and $50. And honestly, the fog difference ain't that bad, people. Chill. You know, I could relate to James Sunderland's guilt of being directly responsible for his wife's death.
I never removed the clock capacitor from my ex-wife and she died.
For those who don't know, rather than using rechargeable batteries for its clock, the Xbox used a clock capacitor, which over time became prone to leaking acid onto the motherboard, meaning bye-bye Xbox. But all you do is crack your Xbox open, take off the hard drive exposing the motherboard, and if it's still in there, just give her a few twists with your fingers until she breaks free, as I'm sure you've got better things to do than desolder it from beneath the motherboard. There's a bit of talk about early models having dodgy DVD drives and solder joints that crack in the power supply, but honestly, I've owned a few of these over the years and have never come across any such problem. It's more the controllers you should watch out for. Make sure they don't have signs of having been wrapped up a million times, as it puts strain on the wires inside. See, just look at my controller graveyard. Damn Microsoft and their weak red cables. Anyone want to resolder these for me? I'll pay you in back rubs. The Xbox actually lost Microsoft over $4 billion throughout its lifespan, but it was a price they were willing to pay to get their foot in the market and set themselves up for the future. And with their little taste tester, we got something great. Something that represents the last time in gaming history where there was no bullshit. No patches, no half-baked games requiring DLCs to finish them, no endless add-ons being shoved down your throat. Call me the get off my lawn type, but back then, when a game was released, it was done. There was no second chance to patch shit up that they ran out of time to do. And while there were a few games that offered the live service, they still had to have a complete offline single-player campaign or story mode, because a lot of people who bought the game still didn't have internet at the time. Bit of a ranty tangent there, so I'll cut it short or we'll be here all night. With a low-cost entry barrier while easily being the most powerful system of its generation, allowing its kick-ass games to look absolutely gorgeous even by today's standards, I highly recommend the Xbox to anyone pondering getting into it. After all, there's certainly worse things you could be spending your money on. Anyway, that's all folks. If you've made it this far, thanking you again. And if you enjoyed my video, please share your Xbox experiences in the comments below, and consider subscribing because I actually really enjoy making this kind of content, and if I know there's an audience for it, then, well, I'll keep on delivering. But alas, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.